So my name is Megan Waters. I am the Community Engagement Director at UTA. We are excited for this discussion this evening to talk about our 2025 to 2029 5-year service plan. This is the first round of public engagement this summer, and our plan right now is unphased. So you'll hear from our service planning manager to talk through some of the unphased service plan concepts for the next 5 years. Before we get started, Eric, if you want to go to the next slide for me. Eric's controlling the slides tonight because he'll be doing most of the talking, but just to give you an overview of our presentation and info session this evening, we'll give you just a little orientation to the meeting. We will have, as I mentioned, an overview of the concepts in the 5-year service plan. And then if folks have questions or discussion items at the end, we will have some time for you all to share those questions, share your thoughts and feedback with us too on what's in the presentation. So I know a lot of people have used Zoom before, but if anyone needs a refresher, if you want to go to the next slide, Eric, we do have a couple of features for you to use this evening. Chat is a feature where you can just put your question or your thought in the chat box anytime during the presentation, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation during our Q&A and feedback. The Q&A feature is also similar to the chat, but you can type your questions there. If you do want to verbalize your question, we may use this function if time allows and if our numbers are reasonable, but we'll mostly rely on the chat and Q&A. But do know if you do need to raise your hand to unmute and ask your question if you're unable to chat, that is an option. And then if you do need closed captioning tonight, there's a button there to turn on your caption so you have live transcription of the session. Next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Eric to talk through our 5-year service plan for 2025 to 2029, starting with the purpose. So take it away, Eric, if you want to share your video too. There you go.
All right, thanks, Megan. And welcome everyone to our information session tonight. As Megan mentioned, my name is Eric Callison. I'm the manager of service planning for UTA. And we're going to just talk a little bit about the broad themes before we get into the details of the plan. But what we're working on in this 5-year service plan, we have a variety of things that are going on here. We do want to continue the work that we've done so far to improve the operator working conditions for our bus and train operators. A lot of that is improving the quality of their shifts by having less peak hour only service and more all-day service. We do have a number of projects coming down the pipeline in the near term, the medium term, and the long term. Those are mainly housed in our long-range transit plan, as well as the Wasatch Front Regional Council and Mountain Association of Governments, or WFRC and MAG plans that are housed in the Regional Transportation Plan, or the RTP. Some of those we do expect to happen in the next 5 years, and they will be a part of this plan. We are, of course, always gathering, collecting, studying community feedback. Hope to be as responsive to that as our budget, staffing, and other resources allow. We do want to keep trying to make the system as efficient and optimized as possible. We have found some opportunities to reduce some duplication, to make things a little bit more straightforward in some parts of our system that will hopefully allow us to achieve our other goals as well. And then it has been a couple of years since a lot of the COVID lockdown measures and things like that ended, but we are still in the process of restoring service in areas that was previously reduced, either because of COVID or due to staffing shortages in the last few years. So some of the optimization and other things that we're working on will hopefully help us do that as quickly as possible. Just a quick overview of where we are in the timeline. This is public engagement period number 1. So this, we'll be looking at the draft 5-year service plan tonight. And then after this public engagement period ends, the last day to submit your comments for this round is this Friday, July 12th. And so after that, we will immediately go into a review of those comments and draft revisions. And we'll have a final draft that we'll present to the public and to all of our major stakeholders in August and September during the public engagement period number 2. After that, we'll again come back, revise, optimize, improve the plan. We will present it to the UTA Local Advisory Council for approval and the UTA Board of Trustees for adoption by the end of this year, and then we'll immediately go into the service implementation process. And the first change day that will be affected by anything in this 5-year service plan will be April 2025 change day. Just a couple of notes about the presentation. This is a preliminary concept review, and all of the details may not be what ends up happening, but this is just to get all of these proposals out so that everybody understands kind of what's on the table. The proposals are listed in rough priority order. It doesn't mean that the first thing that you see would happen first. We have not yet done the phasing year by year, so we'll present this as, here's what we think will happen in April 2025, and then here's everything else that we think will happen between 2026 and 2029. After we wrap up this comment period and engagement period for the draft 5-year plan, we will present as part of the final draft a phased plan with every year spelled out, but we're not to that point yet. And then over here on the left-hand side of the screen, we have the frequent all-day service in green, all-day service in blue, peak hour only service in red, and then the rail service is the colored dotted lines. Black dotted lines you'll see throughout the presentation means that a transit service is being replaced by another one. There's very little actually going away, but there is quite a bit of shuffling and some things moving around in this presentation. On each slide, you'll also see hours, miles, shifts, and pullouts. You'll see a number for each of those. The changes are presented roughly in packages, kind of as each concept. And basically, this is to get an idea of the scale of each change. Some of the changes are very large scale, require a lot of hours and miles. Some changes may not require as many. When we talk about shifts, that's the number of pieces of work that would need to be filled, excuse me, in order to implement this service. And the number of pullouts is the number of vehicles that we'll need to pull out. That does not directly correspond to the number of actual bus and train operators that we need to employ or to the number of vehicles that we need to maintain. But that's because we are working on, as I mentioned, improving those working conditions. And we've made a lot of headway. We continue to work on that, continue to improve our hiring and our retention. But that does mean that it requires more bus operators, for example, to run the same amount of service than it would have under pre-COVID conditions. So we're presenting this plan as shifts and pull out, recognizing that that may change a little bit as we actually get into hiring and employing people to actually run this service in the future. But you can see some of them will have a large impact in shifts and some of them will have a small impact in shifts, just as kind of a way to understand how much we're getting for the amount that we're investing in each change. And with that, we'll go to the April 2025 plan. And this, again, this is the draft plan. This is what we're currently prepared to commit to for April 2025. And this may change based on feedback. Any of this might, things might move around. Things might move back into more of the long-range transit plan space. Things might be moved forward. It all kind of depend on the feedback that we get from the community as well as our internal conversations about our ability to deploy the service. So for April 2025, we have routes 39, 201, and 218 in Salt Lake County. These routes were all reduced in December of 2022 due to staffing shortages. But they meet all of our standards, all of our performance criteria for running a higher level of service. So we propose to restore Route 39 back to every 15 minutes on weekdays and routes 201 and 218 to every 30 minutes on weekdays. See that this, just for example, I won't spell this out for every slide, but that's about 24,000 additional hours per year to operate 291,000 miles, an additional 12 shifts, and an additional 5 vehicles pulled out. And as I mentioned, the rest of the plan is not phased to a specific date. So this is just what would happen during the next 4 years of the plan. We've broken that up into Weber, Davis, and Box Elder, and then Salt Lake County, and then Utah County. So in Ogden, just to kind of start with the bigger things, Route 600 would replace the northern half of the current Route 470 between Farmington and Ogden, and Route 600 would come every 15 minutes instead of every 30 minutes, which the 470 does today. That change was in the previous version of the 5-year plan. We've received a lot of community support for that. We feel like it's still a very good idea to continue with that. We also have a few things changing within Ogden itself. Route 610 would provide a loop service around town in both directions that replaces part of the 612 and part of the 625. Route 645, we propose to increase to every 30 minutes and have that combined with part of the 640. Part of Route 645 today runs the same route as OGX or very similar. And so we see an opportunity to increase the level of service on these routes without having to duplicate everything. So we have 610, 645, the 640, and then Route 612 would come into Ogden Station, and that would replace the Ogden trolley, which is Route 601. The trolleys that we've been running in Ogden, Layton, and Farmington would be just kind of incorporated into our regular transit service. So this is a chance for us to increase the level of service throughout the city of Ogden and hopefully do it in a way that we can do it as fast as possible without duplicating too much. You'll notice that it is an increase of 25 shifts and a decrease of 1 pullout. And that is a big difference, but that is because we are trying to use our fleet more efficiently, have the vehicles run for more hours a day, and provide more frequent service and more all-day service than we're currently providing. In the southern half of Route 470 is going to be replaced by the Davis-Salt Lake Connector, which is a project that has been on the books for quite a while now. But we are advancing with that, with the environmental clearance and the design of that service. We have strong community support for that service as well. We feel like it's reasonable for us to be implementing that in the 5-year timeframe. So the southern half of the Route 470 would be replaced by Route 470X, or the Davis-Salt Lake Community Connector, which would also be a 15-minute route. And then also Route 455 would be split at Farmington as well. And Route 400, as shown on this map, would serve the portion of Route 455 that travels on Orchard Drive. Route 609 would take over for Route 455 north of Farmington Station and serve the park and ride lots on Highway 89 between Farmington and Ogden. The combination of routes 400 and 609 would replace the 455, and the combination of Route 470X and 609 would replace Route 473. We also have a completely new route proposed here, which is Route 417. This route would start in Salt Lake City and travel north on Redwood into Woods Cross and North Salt Lake into the Woods Cross Frontrunner Station, and then it would continue across to the hospital in Bountiful, as well as north on Orchard Drive, and then into Centerville and end at the Legacy Crossing development on the west side of I-15. At Layton Hills Mall, currently Route 470 stays on Main Street, but we feel like it would be appropriate for Route 600 to serve the mall more directly. That means that Route 627 would cover this portion of Main Street. And what's shown here is 627 would actually be Route 628. That's currently the Midtown Trolley, but we have worked with the city of Layton on incorporating that into our regular service as well as part of the 600 and the 627. We also propose to have Route 627 extend to the Fruit Heights Park and Ride, where it would transfer to what is today the 455, but would become the 609. And then also Route 640 would just end at Clearfield Station here, because Route 600 would cover this portion of Antelope Drive between Clearfield Station and Layton Hills Mall. And you'll notice that this is actually slightly fewer hours and miles and vehicles. This is an opportunity for us to increase the level of service in this area and provide some optimization at the same time. At Roy Station, we have several routes that come very close to Roy Station, but do not go into the station. We realize that that's an opportunity to optimize our system a little bit to create some better connections with Frontrunner and between bus routes. Again, the 645 would replace part of the 640 and connect into Roy Station from this side, as well as extending the 626 up. And the 604 would then just end at Roy Station and connect. Route 604 would be realigned slightly to cover some of the current stops on Route F620. That's because we are continuing to see growth in the West Haven area. And then we feel that would be more appropriately served by a full-size bus. And then Route 600 will continue to serve the current Route 470 alignment. In Northern Weber County, we have Pleasant View Station that we are not currently directly serving with any service. We'd like to take advantage of that location as a transfer point and as a park and ride. So we have Route 612 and Route 613 that would come into Pleasant View Station, as well as Route 630, which comes close. but doesn't currently pull into the station. We propose to extend that into the station. And then Route 613 would be combined with Route F618, which currently serves BDO. And we would serve this development with the full-size bus on Route 613. And then we also have Route 616, which ran prior to COVID between Pleasant View and the Ogden station, would be replaced by the service on Route 630 coming in from the station into, excuse me, into the Ogden station. You'll notice that there's quite a bit of reshuffling of routes through here. We did propose in the previous 5-year service plan to include some form of on-demand service in Northern Weber County as well. We're calling that innovative mobility zones at this stage in the plan, because they could be UTA on demand by VIA, they could be provided by means of some other service as well. So we're not specifically calling it UTA on demand at this moment, but it would be some sort of demand responsive service that would connect North Ogden, Pleasant View, Marriott Slaterville, Far West, Harrisville, and Plain City into the Pleasant View station, as well as into the Ogden station. So you can see that reflected here. We have proposing to add 10,000 bus hours per year, as well as 27,000 innovative mobility hours. And then in Brigham City, we currently have Route 630, which is a fixed route, as well as the flex route F638. Currently, Route F638 does not carry very many riders, and feedback from this community is that we feel like it could be that amount of resource and money could be used a little bit more efficiently. So we're proposing to increase Route 630 frequency from 60 minutes, excuse me, to every 30 minutes on weekdays, as well as replace Route F638 with an on-demand area. Looks like we're getting some comments in the chat. I've not read the chat yet, but I will take just a second and review those really quick.
I think for the sake of time, if we just go through all the areas, all the geographic areas, and then we can go back to your presentation for each question, just to make sure we get through it all.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just noticed that we were getting some chats, so I read those real quick.
Lots of good chatter in the chat.
If there's a straightforward or non-map oriented question to resolve, I can respond to those just in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great, Lila, if you want to go ahead, and then I'm happy to come back to any comments that we need to maybe look at the map for after I'm done kind of walking through all of the concepts, if that's all right with everyone. All right, so we will continue then into Salt Lake County. And this is 200 South. This is also carried over from the previous 5-year service plan. As you may know, we update the 5-year service plan every 2 years, which is very quick in government time, but we're trying to be as responsive as possible to the needs of our community and things that are coming up. But there will be some things that are the same between this 5-year plan and the previous one. One of those is increasing the frequency on 200 South. Currently, Route 2 runs every 15 minutes. We would propose to have a Route 2A and 2B, so service would be every 6 to 9 minutes between those two routes. Route 2A would serve the U of U campus in the clockwise direction, and Route 2B would serve in the counterclockwise direction. And those would both tie in at Salt Lake Central, 2 tracks and Front Runner. And then we are working with the U of U on several potential end-of-line locations. EOL means end of line for the purposes of this presentation. End-of-line locations, transfer points, transit centers, transit hubs, operator restrooms, of course. So it's possible that this route could be adjusted depending on exactly where those facilities end up being located at the U. Route 205, prior to COVID, was every 15 minutes. Since April 2020, it's run every 30 minutes. We propose to increase the level of service on Route 205 back to every 15 minutes. We feel like this change is long overdue, and that it would help a lot more people be able to use the service in this area. Between Magna and West Valley City, we're proposing to add a new end-of-line and transit center in Magna for Route 35, as well as for the new Route 31. This route would travel east and west on 3100 South between Magna and Central Point Station, and cover a couple of light industrial and business park areas in West Valley City and South Salt Lake on its way. The Mid-Valley Connector, or MVX, that will be Route 50X. That project has also started and will open in the next couple of years. So that will travel from Murray Central Station, and it will cover some of what Route 47 and 227 cover today. Connect Murray Central Station to the West Valley Central Station. In conjunction with that, we will be moving Route 47 and 45 from Murray Central Station to Murray North Station. About 10 years ago, those routes moved from Murray North to Murray Central, but now that we have the Mid-Valley Connector making this connection between Murray Central and West Valley Central, it makes more sense to have the 45 and 47 at Murray North Station. And then Route 205, instead of coming into Murray North Station, would come into Murray Central Station from the east. Route 227 also doesn't make a lot of sense to continue duplicating the Mid-Valley Connector in this section. So we've proposed to extend that through some additional residential areas that we don't serve today on its way into Mill Creek Station, as well as combine that with Route F590 to provide more consistent service and also weekend service to the 2700 West and 90 South corridors, as well as to Slick West Jordan, which is just south of the Jordan Valley Track Station on the Red Line. Currently, we do not serve any of those areas on weekends, and this would be a chance to both increase the frequency of service as well as the weekend coverage there. The S line, this is not a big project in terms of the length, but it would be extended from the current terminus at McClellan Street to Highland Drive and have one additional station at Highland. That's a small change in terms of geography, but it does have some operating impacts for us. A very big change in terms of geography is the new Route 256. This was also in the previous 5-year plan. But this route would travel from 5600 West Station on the Red Line at the south end, all the way up 5600 West to the airport and international center. It would run every 15 minutes on weekdays, less frequently on weekends, but it would run on Saturdays and Sundays as well. That does replace the Flex Route F556 on this corridor, as well as provide a new connection that has not previously existed on the west side of Salt Lake County to the airport and international center. You'll notice that is all by itself, that is a pretty big add in terms of 33 shifts and 11 new pullouts, but that is a pretty regionally significant change for that amount of investment. Hogle Zoo, not a lot of shifts or pullout impact, but a pretty culturally important change. In the past, we indirectly served Hogle Zoo via This Is the Place State Park, and working with Salt Lake City on a roundabout in the neighborhood of Sunnyside Avenue and Crestview Drive, we feel would allow us to serve this safely with a bus again and allow us to open a stop directly in front of the zoo. So we're doing a little bit of shuffling of routes in this area to make that possible, but we feel like that's a pretty important connection. We've heard a lot from our community that it would be good for us to serve the zoo more directly than we do today. In South Salt Lake County, we have been running on-demand service since 2019, and that's been very successful in this area to the point that we have had to add more money, more drivers, more hours to it several times just in the first few years that it's existed. And we are very excited as planners. We're very nerdy about this kind of thing, but we're very excited to be able to have the data that shows where people travel when they have the opportunity to travel anywhere that they want. And so we have two new routes and an extension in this area that we feel will serve the areas that we're seeing the most activity in the on-demand service. So we do have current Route 871 that travels on the freeway and gets off at 123rd South. We've proposed to have that serve the new Point Frontrunner Station when that goes in. That the Point Frontrunner Station may not happen in the next 5 years. In that case, it would just serve the Porter Rockwell Boulevard extension between Lehigh and Draper. And then it serve Draper Station if the point is not open, and come through on State Street in Draper and Sandy up to Sandy Civic Center Station, which is 10,000 South. We also have Route 218. Currently, Route 218 serves between 104th South and the Red Line, which is 8020 South on Redwood. We've proposed to extend Route 217 down to 104th South every 15 minutes, and from there into South Jordan Station and across into Sandy Civic Center Station, and have Route 218 instead serve Riverfront Parkway south of 104th South, and then Redwood between 114th and 146th South. And that would tie into the Point Frontrunner Station as well when it opens, or Draper Frontrunner Station if the point is not open yet. Route 200 would extend further south on State Street. Currently, Route 200 ends at 5300 South at Murray Central Station, and Route 201 continues further south. So Route 201 would just be replaced by the extended Route 200. And then the third route that we're talking about in this area is the new Route 126. This is, again, quite an extensive service, but it covers a lot of destinations that we feel are significant in the area. It has, starting from the west end of line, is Daybreak Parkway Station on the Red Line. It continues down past Harriman City Hall, through multiple areas of residential Harriman to the Real Salt Lake Academy and the Slick Harriman campus near Mountain View Corridor. From there, it doubles back up to 134th to serve commercial areas in Riverton, as well as the LDS Riverton office complex. And then on 3600 West up to 126 South over to the Draper Frontrunner Station, and then continues further east on 123rd South to Draper Town Center Station, which is the end of line for the track's blue line. So it ties all three rail lines together, and it serves a lot of destinations that we're seeing develop as important travel patterns within the on-demand service area. It is not a straight line, but it is important to note that that's kind of where we're seeing the activity, we're seeing the travel patterns. This is probably not the final form of service in this area. It's quite possible on a 10 to 20 year horizon that we would see this be split up into 2 or more routes. But at this time, this is covering kind of this pattern from north-south in Harriman, between the academies, the college, and the track station, as well as east-west in Riverton and Draper to the Frontrunner Station and to Draper Town Center Station on the blue line. On the west side of Salt Lake County in the industrial areas, we currently run some all-day service on Route 509 and some peak hour only service on Route 513, as well as peak hour only service on Route 551 to the International Center. So we propose to replace all 3 of those routes with the new routes 208, 236, 18, and 26. And this map's a little confusing because so much is getting shuffled around, but in brief, Route 208 would start at Salt Lake Central Station and continue south on 900 West to Central Point Station. Route 18 would start at Central Point Station and head west on 1700 South, 1820 South, 1730 South, over to 5600 West, and then down to about 2700 South or Parkway Boulevard. Route 26 would also connect there via Parkway Boulevard, 2600 South, as well as 3100 South, serve the Cultural Friendship Center, and end at Mill Creek Station on 3300 South. And then Route 236 would start from West Valley Central Station and follow the same route as the 509 does up 3600 West, but then it would cut north through the industrial areas up to California and to Bangerter, and then serve the airport and the International Center. And the important difference there is that all 4 of those routes would provide at least 60-minute service all day long, instead of only 4 trips a day each direction, which is what the 513 does, and 5 to 6 trips each way, which is what the 551 does. So that's a pretty big increase in temporal coverage in this area, as well as additional connection opportunities that don't exist today. Route 203 is a route that's been identified in the Salt Lake City Transit Master Plan as a future frequent route. We are not proposing to add it as a frequent route immediately, but to add it as a 30-minute route. The north end of this route is North Temple Frontrunner Station. It would then proceed down 300 West to Central Point Station at 2100 South. And this would provide an important coverage to the Granary District, which we do not currently have a route that goes right through the middle of that. Some of you may be familiar with the TechLink study, some improvements and additional stations on tracks. TechLink will not be built in the next 5 years, but we hope that we can provide some bus service to this area as a means of connecting the neighborhood, as well as building up that transit market for the future track service. And then once the track service is in place in this area, Route 203 could become a frequent bus route and complement the track service as well. The Fort Union Transit Center is actually on Winchester Street in this plan, but we have had identified a need for a transit center in this area for quite a while. And we have an opportunity to convert an old park and ride that was previously owned by UTA into a new transit end-of-line facility. So this would provide the biggest, I think, improvement in connectivity that this provides is the connection between Route 209 on 900 East and Fort Union. Currently, Route 209 comes down 900 East and then heads west on Winchester into Fashion Place West track station. And we've been hearing for many years that folks would like to transfer between the 209 and the 72, or have the 209 come down further south to Fort Union or the Union Park area. What we're proposing at this point, and we have received several comments on this as well, with some alternative suggestions, but what we're proposing at this point is creating a transfer point between the 209 and the 72 at the Fort Union Transit Center, then extending Route 62 across to this transit center, shortening Route 213 to here, converting Route F578, which is a flex route, into a fixed route, Route 78, and extending that east on 7800 south to Union Park as well, and creating this new node. This new transit center also has the possibility to become an anchor point for future ski service or express service in the the southeast part of Salt Lake County. And as we are talking about increasing the level of service in the canyons in the coming years, will become increasingly important as an anchor point. Southwest quadrant refers to the area in West Jordan, west of 5600 West. This would start at 7800 South and 5600 West, and this flex route would serve 6400 West, significant residential development in this area, as well as some light industrial employment further south, and tie into the 5600 West track station on the red line. And then we've also proposed some expanded innovative mobility zone coverage in Salt Lake County. More or less that includes everything south of 6200 South on the west side of I-15 and everything south of I-215 on the east side of I-15, which includes significant portions of Cottonwood Heights, Midvale, Sandy, South Jordan, and West Jordan. And some of that is already covered by fixed route service, but there are some areas that it's very difficult to cover with fixed route buses in these communities. And hopefully this would help us provide that coverage without having to make a very expensive bus investment to serve the same area. And then, so these zones 503 and 504 do take over part of the current South Salt Lake County zone, which would allow us to extend the current South Salt Lake County zone 501 further west to include more of Harriman, as well as the city of Copperton, which is not currently covered by the on-demand service. Finally, we'll go over the proposals for Utah County. I recognize that there's a lot in here, so I appreciate everyone bearing with me. In South Utah County, this is another proposal that is carried over from the previous 5-year plan. We propose to add a Route 823, which would serve additional commercial centers in Springville and Spanish Fork and tie into the Provo Front Runner Station. This also on 1750 West in Springville near I-15 would serve the future Springville Front Runner Station. And then from Main and Center Street in Spanish Fork, which is where we currently propose to end this route, we would extend it west on Center Street in Spanish Fork to the Spanish Fork Front Runner Station once that opens. Extending Front Runner to Springville, Spanish Fork, and Payson is not within the current scope of the 5-year plan, but we do want to lay as much of the groundwork for that as we can. That project is well underway as well. So we do, you should expect to hear more about Front Runner in this area in the next few years, but in the meantime, we'll be getting the buses prepared for that change. In Northwest Utah County, we currently serve Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs with Route 806, which is 4 trips a day each way. And we're proposing to increase that to all-day service on weekdays and Saturdays from Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs via park and rides in Eagle Mountain City Center, the ranches, and Saratoga Springs near Saratoga Road. Excuse me. And there would be those 3 main park and rides. There may also be other stops along the corridor, but those would be the main focal points. We've been in dialogue with Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs for several years now about the appropriate places to serve with transit. We feel very good about that collaboration. So that does include also a significant expansion to our paratransit coverage area, because we do not provide paratransit in areas where we provide only peak hour service, but by replacing the peak hour only service with all day service, we're also including paratransit to this area. So it's a pretty significant increase in mobility for people in these communities as well. And then we've also proposed adding multiple innovative mobility zones in this area as well. You can see it's actually quite a bit more on-demand type service than fixed route service in terms of the number of hours. But we feel like that's important to develop travel markets in this area as well, just because we're coming from so little transit service with the possibility to expand quite a bit more in future years. So this Route 860 would start in Eagle Mountain City Center and serve the American Fork Frontrunner Station. And then if we go to the other side of North Utah County, Route 862, which currently serves Orem, we would extend north through Pleasant Grove and American Fork to serve the American Fork Frontrunner Station from the other side. So, and then the parts of Route 862 that would not be served in Orem would be replaced by a new Route 846, which would tie into the Vineyards Frontrunner Station at 800 North in Orem. And then Route 850 would also be rerouted to serve the Valley Grove development in Pleasant Grove, which is a connection that does not exist today. Finally, we have proposed a new innovative mobility zone on the west side of Provo to serve Provo Frontrunner Station, Provo Airport, as well as Orem Station, the Orem LDS Temple, and there is a variety of new residential development going on in this area as well. And then we've also proposed the current Route 833 does kind of a short jaunt between the Provo Frontrunner Station and the airport. We propose to expand that to also include East Bay, the Provo Airport, as well as Geneva Road between Center Street and Provo and the Orem Frontrunner Station. And that is all of the proposals in the draft 5-year service plan. So, and then we'll, as I mentioned, I'll review the chat here in just a minute, and then I'll let Megan take over for just a second.
Well, I'll help you with the chat here, Eric. There's a few questions and comments that have come in. So you might want to hold off on this page and just be prepared to split back to some of the more specifics on the service plan for 5-year service plan. So I know Lila was answering a few in the chat. We did have a question about the Davis Salt Lake Community Connector and when that would be slated to be in operation. If you want to just give an overview of that, Eric, Lila did have an answer in the chat, but just for the sake of having it for the whole group presented, do you want to address that?
Yes. So we don't have a specific opening date for the Davis Salt Lake Community Connector. We think it would be within this 5 years, it's probably more likely to be 2028 or 2029 towards the end of this current 5-year service plan. We will know a little bit more as we get closer. You know, we're working on the design and environmental work right now. We have not begun any construction of any new facilities or anything like that yet. So we do expect to have a date soon, possibly by the time we do the next 5-year plan in 2 years. But based on what we understand today, we would probably phase that towards the end of this 5-year plan.
Okay, thanks, Eric, for covering that. If you want to go back to your Ogden area slides, one of our participants is asking about what connections did the Ogden changes have to the Marriott Slaterville area? Would you be able to address that a little bit?
Yes. So the biggest difference in Marriott Slaterville is that you would have on-demand coverage to Ogden Station. So you'd be able to catch an on-demand vehicle directly to Ogden. Route 613 would still connect this area between 400 North and 2700 North. And then serve the BDO instead of 1200 West, South 400 North. And along with that, Route F618 currently provides 30-minute service. So we would propose increasing the level of service on Route 613. It's currently every 60. We propose to increase that to every 30 as well. So you'd have more frequent bus service as well as the on-demand coverage if you are not close to the bus route.
Okay, great. If that is sufficient, otherwise feel free to add any follow-up questions in the chat there. We had a question that was similar to kind of when things will be in operation. Question from Allie about Redwood Road in North Salt Lake.
I'd like to know too.
So part of our feedback opportunity for this unphased plan is to understand the priorities from our community and public partners. So please, Lila shared the link. We'll put the link up again on the screen at the end of the meeting, but we would love to hear about your priorities as well, based on what you've seen presented here.
I will say, we don't know for sure, but Route 417, we do have some incentives to put that towards the beginning of the phasing in the plan, because we have a strong travel market in the on-demand area in the north of Salt Lake City, especially to Northwest Middle School, which is at Redwood and 1700 North. We have Spectrum Academy in North Salt Lake, and we have just the connection to the Front Runner Station in Woods Cross, as well as that connection across on 500 South in Bountiful. It has been identified by a lot of the feedback that we received from the community already as an important east-west connection that doesn't exist as a fixed route today. It does exist as an on-demand connection, but it doesn't exist as a bus. So there's a lot of things in there that say, okay, this is probably a pretty high priority for us. As Megan mentioned, we want to hear from everybody that would benefit from this. That gives us a justification to prioritize something over something else, if that's what we need to do. And then we hope to be able to provide that service as quickly as possible in this area, recognizing that there are some significant markets that would stand to benefit from that.
Yeah, and we can see from the chat, a lot of endorsements of some of the things in the plan, which is great.
We like endorsements.
We know a lot of this stuff is important to communities, so really identifying those priority places. We also understand, I know there's a comment, service holes in Ogden 2nd Street. What is the plan for that shortfall? Question about the 612 no longer being the entire length of Washington Boulevard. Just noting that this is a service decrease. Eric, would you go to that slide and address that a little bit for Ogden?
Just 1 second. Here around this. Come here. PowerPoint, thank you. So it's not quite shown on this slide. If I need to, I can pull up a different map. But we do have the on-demand service would cover basically all the way down to 12th Street in Ogden. It's not shown right here. It's just off the map here. That it does include the connection between, for example, OWTC and BDO, which we hope at some point would become a fixed route connection via 2nd Street. Excuse me. And then as far as we have Route 612 coming into Ogden Station here, and then we'd have Route 600 would provide 15-minute service on this corridor in Washington Boulevard between basically 36th Street and the Transit Center as well. And then this is a little bit different than what we have today. Today, Route 612 does come through this portion of Washington Terrace. Let me see if see my pointer, if that's helpful. This portion of Washington Terrace right here would be covered by instead Route 645 every 30 minutes and Route 610 every 30 minutes, which would provide a connection that doesn't exist today between South Ogden, Washington Terrace, and basically Ogden Front Runner Station, with connections to all of the other routes there via Wall Avenue. If that is not what you were looking for, we need to hear about that as well. There is a bit of a change. Kind of splitting up Washington is not something that we've done in the past. It is an opportunity for us to potentially get some service off the ground faster by not running the 600 and the 612 on this whole portion of Washington together. That means that we can kind of stretch our staffing a little bit further. But that's why we're looking for feedback on this right now, is what are the opportunities to optimize versus what is the priority for people using the service, in terms of whether that is whether it's a negative impact to change the route or it's a positive impact to be able to do things faster and a little bit leaner, I guess. So, we appreciate comments and concerns about that as well. That's what's in the current plan. Again, this is a draft plan. We will certainly be considering everybody's comments as we go forward.
Thanks, Eric. All right, I'm getting back on track. I know I skipped over a couple. We do have a question that our Chief Planning and Engagement Officer is on the line tonight as well. Nicole Bordeaux is here and may want to take a stab at this question as well. But we have a question regarding the point station on Front Runner, asking, it seems like it's pretty close to the Lehigh station. And so just wanting to understand kind of the placement of that station. Yeah, that's sort of the question in a gist. Nicole, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think right now I want to say that we're designing that in the process, and I think that's just making a connection. It's been in the plan as part of the UDOT project. That's not necessarily a UTA project that's working with the state. We are looking to put double track in there to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the kind of the speed and reliability of Front Runner, because that's where you would say it's kind of too close. So that's really important to us. And again, like Eric said, it's really good to get your feedback on this, because those are the things that we're looking to hear. I do know we modeled it. I do know that's why we're adding additional double tracking to make sure that it doesn't interfere with those with the travel time. So love to hear that, and give us continued feedback on it. And it is a UDOT project, I think, implementing that piece of it.
Yeah, there's two sort of complementary double tracking projects that UTA is working with UDOT on. UDOT is the lead. And so we can put some links in the chat to learn more about those specific projects. I know I saw another question about the Front Runner extension. So we'll put some more resources into the Front Runner project specifically.
And I would just add, I just saw a last question on the bottom about Utah County IMZs. This is our 5-year plan. This is every 2 years. We also have a long range strategic plan that falls under Chief Planning and Engagement Officer. That's a 4-year plan that looks at the 30-year network. I would encourage you all, we can put links to that. That is something where our innovative mobility zones, we look at those long year times, and that's what Eric works off of to get our service plans. So those are opportunities for you to give us feedback on that as well. And looking to our future planning and our future network for the Wasatch Front. So I think there's opportunities to give us more information as we move forward. So I just wanted to throw that out there for the community as well.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks.
I know we have Davis County on-demand zone. There's just a question about what the plan for on-demand service in South Davis County. Do you want to talk about that briefly, Eric?
Yes. So regarding the South Davis on-demand zone specifically, just pull up that slide. We are not proposing to change the boundaries of that zone. Just it might affect like the number of drivers and vehicles that we need to provide service there. Certainly with the more frequent service on Route 470X compared to the 470, as well as the fixed route connection on Route 417 that doesn't exist today, we may see the demand go down for the on-demand, but we would not reduce the service area. We would just might have to manage the amount of hours that it takes to provide the service a little bit differently, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. If that requires follow-up, feel free to put your follow-up in the chat. We have a clarification. So on the 613, the question is, so it will go along 1200 west, but no connection across 400 north or to Highway 126. Can you clarify on the 613, Eric?
So the 613 will not go across. Like we've not proposed that it do that at this point on 400 North or across, except at Pleasant View Station. And then again, it would tie in at Ogden Station on the south end. And the rationale behind that is to prioritize the connection between Ogden Station and BDO that exists today on Route F618, as well as to preserve as much of the 613, current 613 as we can by doing that. If there is, if that is a priority to connect on 400 North or on 2nd Street or on another corridor, we'd like to hear that. Because like I say, this is the draft plan. It's time for us to kind of get the pulse on some of these proposals. And we've proposed kind of keeping everything pretty linear in this area at this point. But we'd love to hear what else would be useful to your community.
All right, cool. Thanks for that explanation. Question about why there is no route planned currently in this 5-year plan from Vineyard Station to Valley Grove, Pleasant Grove downtown.
Just testing my knowledge of this presentation. There it is. So we would, at this point, we have not provided that as a direct connection, just because we're incrementally, we're looking at first covering Valley Grove at all, and then also kind of trying to be in line with what's already been identified as future projects in this area. So just for clarification, it's not necessarily from the scope of the 5-year plan, but there has been on MAG's RTP for a while improvements to the Route 850 corridor, which does include coming through Valley Grove and a higher level of service on Route 850. And so we're proposing to take a step towards that by having the 15-minute service come into Valley Grove and making a few changes to the network. From Vineyard, your options would be to either take Front Runner to American Fork and catch Route 862 back to Valley Grove. Here, I'll use my pointer for that. Front Runner to American Fork and take Route 862 back to this area, or you could catch Route 846 and then either Route 850 or Route 862 as well. So it would be a ride that could be accomplished with one transfer. We have not heard a lot about that specific connection from the community. So if there's somewhere that you could point us to, or if there's other folks that you know would benefit from that, we'd encourage you to share the comment link with them as well so that we can get more information about that. It's a rapidly growing area, and we are still looking at what the best option is to provide those connections.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. I threw there's 3 different links on Front Runner projects in the chat, so feel free to peruse those. Sorry, there's a lot of sources and a lot of moving parts, but you'll hopefully find some more information about kind of how the double tracking and the Front Runner South extension are working. I did want to turn over to the Q&A. So we did, and just based on personal preference, people are using different modes, which is great. But just to clarify, so this was an insightful question on the interactive map that we have on the website at rideuta.com/FYSP. It shows a phase 1 for Route 200 and a phase 2 for Route 200. Eric, do you mind talking through that just a little bit, sort of the phasing on that?
Now let me actually unshare this presentation for a second and pull up the map. It's just so that I can show it a little bit more clearly. And I'm just going to be working from the same interactive map that's available on the website, so you should be able to do everything that I'm about to do. Share the screen again. All right, does everybody see the map?
Yes.
Okay. So we go to phase 1 of Route 200. The main difference between that and what's running today is that we don't have Route 200 going to the Capitol on weekdays anymore. Today, Route 200 starts at North Temple Station. It does loop up to the Capitol and then come down State Street. That has been We've received some comments that that's not ideal for people who are trying to get from Front Runner Station to the rest of State Street. It involves everybody else kind of sitting through this capital deviation. And so what we proposed instead is to have this Route 400 kind of serve multiple functions. It does connect into the Woods Cross Station in the Bountiful and Lakeview Hospital in Bountiful, as well as Orchard Drive in Bountiful and North Salt Lake. And then it would continue down. So Route 455 does Orchard Drive today, but instead of just coming down 300 West like Route 455 does, we would propose to come down Victory Road and serve the state capitol building and then tie into Front Runner at Salt Lake Central Station, and not have both of those connections from the same station on the same route, so that people can use whichever connection works best for them. And that way we don't have the people who are trying to go further on State Street than the Capitol. They don't have to sit through this part of Route 200 to the Capitol today. So phase one is a relatively minor change in that we're just switching Route 200 from going to the Capitol to Route 400. And then phase two is what we described in the slides, and this would be the kind of the final form of Route 200 by the end of this 5-year period, which still starts at North Temple Station and continues south on State Street, but then it would continue, instead of ending at Murray Central Station, which is what it does today, it would continue south to Sandy Civic Center Station and South Jordan Front Runner Station every 15 minutes, which would replace. So at the beginning of this plan in April 2025, we've proposed to take Route 201 from 60-minute service to 30-minute service. And then by the end of the plan, the 30-minute service on Route 201 would be replaced by 15-minute service on Route 200. And this would just become one longer route with all of these connections along the route. So that's the two phases of Route 200. We had to show it in two different halves for purposes of the plan.
Okay, thanks for walking through that. We do have just a couple minutes left. I know there's a few questions outstanding. Eric, if you want to pull your slides back up.
Yep.
We have a question about the free fare sponsorship for the Ogden, Layton, and Lagoon shuttle and how that will impact our phasing of the 5-year service plan. Do you want to address that? Maybe I know Nicole's still here, so she might want to chime in as well.
Yeah, I'll start and Nicole can correct me if I say anything wrong, but so the let's see. Each of these trolleys that we're running today, we have spoken with the respective cities that sponsor these trolleys, which is Ogden, Layton, and Farmington, and talked about the service that would replace them. And I should pause for just a moment. I didn't cover it during the slides, but since we're still recording, the Farmington trolley currently serves Station Park and Lagoon, and we have proposed to have these Davis Salt Lake Community Connector instead serve Lagoon from Farmington Station every 15 minutes and along the regular route. Currently, the Farmington trolley, Route 667, does a couple of different patterns. It does a figure 8 and it does just a loop at different times of day. It's very confusing for some of our passengers. So we propose to just replace that with a straight shot across on a Davis Salt Lake Community Connector and have more frequent service for that. We have talked to each of the cities, not given them a specific phased date yet, but made them aware that we're interested in incorporating this into the regular service. It means that each of these services would no longer be free fare because they would just be part of a regular local bus route, or in the case of Davis Salt Lake Connector, it'd be part of an enhanced bus route. However, they would no longer be paying us to subsidize the fare. So that's a good deal for them, that they get the higher level of service and they don't have to pay us for it. It does mean that you would have to have a fare or a pass or something to ride that bus. It does not in and of itself affect the phasing nearly as much as, say, staffing or the budget would, if that makes sense. If we see that we have the opportunity to do that, the free fare would not be an obstacle to upgrading that service. It would just mean that would be our conversation with each of those cities.
There's some sort of comments related to lagoon access, lagoon
Yes.
and then pedestrian access.
Go ahead, Nicole.
The only thing I'd add on the trolleys is that UTA works with cities all the time. And if this is something the cities would look to and how to phase that in as we work together, those conversations haven't been permanently made. So as we think about our service and how we move forward with the 5-year plan, those discussions will be forthcoming. I don't think we would want to shock the system too much because that's something, the commitments they've made on a separate piece. But to Eric's point, the service is kind of a little bit different than the actual fare payment. So I don't think it affects the phasing. It's more of our relationship and what the cities are trying to accomplish with the no fare payment, subsidy fare. So thanks, Eric.
So for Lagoon specifically, Davis Salt Lake Community Connector would serve, Park Lane east of the Farmington Front Runner Station. And that does require a bit of a pedestrian upgrade between where the stop will be on Park Lane and the entrance to Lagoon. Lagoon is planning to move their entrance further north, which will help. But in our conversations with the city of Farmington, they were willing to talk about enhancing that pedestrian amenity. Certainly, we would not want to make that change before there's a better sidewalk access in place from the bus station to the front door of Lagoon. And that, again, probably wouldn't happen until Davis Salt Lake Community Connector opens, which, as I mentioned a little bit ago, is probably towards the end of the 5-year plan at this point. So that does give us a little bit of time, hopefully, to work together with the city to enhance that pedestrian amenity and make that an easier service for people to use.
Excellent. Thank you. So I know there's some chatter as well, just about how we're getting the word out. Our team does a lot of work to be in communities across our service area. We, as UTA, serve over 70 municipalities. And so if you do have suggestions on places for our team to consider participating in events or local community opportunities. Cristobal has shared his email in the chat as well. We'd love to hear it. You all are here, you heard about it one way or another, and so we're always looking for ways to improve that. We know not everyone knows about these opportunities, so just appreciate kind of the chiming in on that. One question I will read, and then if you have other questions, we'll just direct you to contact us after. The question is just about the on-demand for North Ogden. And so I think it'd be helpful maybe to talk through sort of the IMZ concept and then sort of what the planning process is around those in terms of phasing.
So the good news about IMC phasing is that it's not dependent on our staffing levels at UTA, at least the way that we currently provide UTA on demand. There's other ways that it can be provided besides specifically UTA on demand by VIA, which is what we've used in our other areas, but it gives us an opportunity to potentially move faster on that kind of thing than it would take for us to be able to hire the same number of operators at UTA to run an equivalent service. So it's not quite as bound by the hiring schedule as some of the other changes in here is, but it is still a significant cost. Like on this slide, we see that it's 10,000 hours for the additions to the fixed route service, but it's 27,000 hours a year for the innovative mobility zone. And all of that just means that's how much we'd have to pay the contractors. The contractor would pay their employees by the hour. And so it's got to go in the hopper with everything else. So I don't have a great answer about exactly when that would be phased, other than it's on an equal footing with everything else in this area at this point, to say, we just want to see what's the best use of our resources, the best way to get stuff out there as quickly as possible. That may mean that on demand is a good option to start with, like I say, because we don't have to hire all the people ourselves, so we might be able to get that off the ground faster. Or we may say it's better to do some bus stuff first, and then do the heavier lift financially with the on demand after that. And again, as we've mentioned, any feedback from the community about which would be most important to do first is very welcome. And we'll do our best to provide the best service for as many people as quickly as possible. that was a lot of hedges in one sentence, but we will do our best to get as much out there as we can.
Well, thanks, Eric. Do you mind going to the last slide for me and we'll just wrap up, and we appreciate everyone's time this evening. This has been a really great conversation. Again, this this session has been recorded. And so if you know someone that would be interested in reviewing it, please pass along the link. It is on our Facebook page now. It'll be available there tonight. And then we'll have it up on our YouTube and on the 5-year service plan webpage on our website as soon as it's ready to go there. So once again, I did put the link in the chat, but you can find the information that was presented here tonight, as well as feedback opportunities on rideuta.com/FYSP. That stands for 5-year service plan. There is that interactive map linked there that Eric had up earlier, as well as a link to submit your feedback. This is a pretty quick public engagement opportunity. We are planning to have a second round in August, as Eric mentioned. And so we would like to get as many comments as we can by this Friday. The information will remain available throughout the summer. We'll just be updating with a more phased plan in August. So look out for that. It'll be at that same link. And we are available if you do have questions for us or want to get in touch. We're at community@rideuta.com. You'll also notice at the web page, 5-year service plan webpage on rideuta.com, we are doing a lot of work in planning to plan for the future, a holistic transit experience. So we have some other related initiatives that are open and ready for public involvement. These include our customer experience plan. We're also developing some criteria for planning with a federal grant, as well as really diving into those innovative mobility zones that Eric is just talking about. So we do have some additional opportunities that sort of round out our planning efforts at UTA to involve the community and really plan holistically for the transit experience in our region. So that is all we have for this evening, unless any of our panelists have any closing remarks.
Just want to say thank you, everyone, for participating tonight, and please do submit your feedback. Encourage others to do the same.
Awesome. We appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great night. We will end the meeting there.